Hi everyone, and welcome to Warren's Team Talk. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And this evening, I'm absolutely delighted to say that I've got Kenny Ken with me, and we're going to be talking about um, what 5 football matches he would like to have with him if he got deserted on a desert island, whether they be on DVD, digital media, Blu-ray, whatever. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really, really good show because Kenny has chosen some absolutely iconic football matches, in my opinion. I mean, he's a lifelong Arsenal's fan, as probably you all know, and his knowledge about Arsenal and football in general, and all sport for that matter, is second to none, in my opinion. It's just unbelievable. He's like walking, talking encyclopedia. Now, I believe that Kenny has lived in Islington all his life and very close to the ground. And since he's been supporting Arsenal, he's seen it all. He's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, to coin a phrase. So, for today's show, Kenny has chosen the following football matches: the Arsenal versus Liverpool FA Cup semi-final marathon between the 12th of April to the 1st of May 1980. The 1979 FA Cup final between the 12th of May, on the 12th of May 1979, between Arsenal and Manchester United, which Arsenal won by 3-2. On the Boxing Day North London derby clash on 1983, between Arsenal and Spurs, and then the 23rd of October 1999, the Premier League match between Arsenal and Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And last but not least, he's chosen for his 5th choice the Champions League final between Arsenal and Barcelona. So let's get started. So welcome, Kenny, to series on my channel. This is the second time that I've done this. The first time I spoke to Jez. So thanks very much to come on and talk to everyone about these 5 classic matches from your life of watching Arsenal. And before we get started on these talking about these games, can I just ask you, Kenny, to tell people how they can contact you, and then kindly tell us about how you started supporting Arsenal.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at KennyKen1972. I don't really go on Twitter that much. I stopped going on there regular basis because Twitter's changed, but it's still the same handle at KennyKen1972. Basically, I supported Arsenal Football Club through my mum. My mum was the one who got me into supporting Arsenal because she supported Arsenal. So there was no sort of argument from myself and my brother because she would tell me that the first time I went to Arsenal was when she was pregnant with me, because what's happened is that I was born in 1972. I was born in just outside Holloway Road, off Liverpool Road, where you used to have the Royal Free Hospital. And if you go down Liverpool Road, you can tell that there's still remnants of the Royal Free Hospital. Obviously, that moved to Holloway Road and became near North Star House. But yeah, I was born in 1972, and our first house was just off Albert Park, which is next to the ground. So you can't get more local than that. So from the age of being a baby up until when I was 5, about 4 years old, we moved to Holly Park in Crouch Hill. It was Arsenal. So you couldn't be anything but Arsenal. But obviously, Mum would tell me all about the 1971 team. Charlie George, because when I was growing up, I associated Charlie George with Derby County, and it never occurred to me he played for played for the Arsenal. The same thing with Bob Wilson. I just saw Bob Wilson as Mr. Football Focus. I thought, what, he played for Arsenal? It was actually a shock when I saw him when I showed a video of the 1971 Cup final when he got beaten at these near posts by Steve Highway. I went, what? This guy played football? Because I only associated Bob Wilson with being the presenter of Football Focus, on grandstand. So it was like kind of a learning curve. But it was one of those things where it was hard being an Arsenal fan because Liverpool was so successful. You know, they had those excellent teams. You know, with Bob Paisley. My first memory of a football match was actually Liverpool on TV. Was Liverpool winning the European Cup against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and that was about a few days afterwards when I watched me kind of remember my first cup final, 1977, when they lost to Man United, and then a few days later they beat Borussia Mönchengladbach. So it was one of those things where you're thinking, well, they've got players like Kevin Keegan, Kenny Dalglish, but it was always drummed into us that we can't support anyone but Arsenal. But in terms of me falling in love with the club, it was obviously, you know, when I really was into football, because the other day, even from a young age, I always listened to football. For instance, I used to listen to the commentaries, watch matches of the day, the big match at 2:30 on a Sunday, match of the day, after Starsky and Hutch on a Saturday, and obviously the home internationals as well. You know, watching obviously Scotland and England. I remember the first game, 1977, when the Scots fans broke the goal when they beat England 2-1. So it's one of those things where I was always into football, but when I fell in love with the club of my own volition was basically the 79, 80 season, because I was fascinated with Arsenal. I knew I was an Arsenal fan, but I didn't feel like an Arsenal fan until that season, because obviously the 1978 FA Cup final, I remember being sad because everyone was sad because Arsenal, and the 1979 Cup final as well, where I was thinking, the thing I noticed was Andover Estate. Everywhere in Andover Estate was full of Arsenal memorabilia. Every household had come on Arsenal, had Arsenal shirts, cup finals. And I swear to God, that's when the FA Cup final meant something. Every estate, you went to Six Acres, Arsenal. You went Archway, all over, North Islington was Arsenal. And that's when I thought, this is big. You know what I mean? And then, obviously, first introduction to Arsenal games was obviously going to football combination games, because when the Rezzies played, they played in a football combination. But when the Rezzies played, you've got to see all the players. So when you're in the stands, in the sort of like seats, not around the goals, you get to sit with the players. So for instance, I used to sit with when I used to go to see a very young Raphael Mead. One of my next door neighbours, Dave Ed, who's, God bless his soul, passed away. He was an Arsenal junior, and he influenced me as well in terms of supporting Arsenal, him and my mum, because his goalkeeper was Gary Lewin. Gary Lewin was his goalkeeper when I used to watch the football combination matches with him, to watch him play. That's how I got to meet the players. So I've met Huggy White, obviously Raphael, his best mate, because they went to Tottenham Park, which has changed its name a few times in Tottenham Park. So that's my introduction to Arsenal. And then after that, it was the first game I went unassisted without parents was I always remember it on my own. It was December 1984. Played Watford 1-1. Ian Allison got a penalty. Tony Carlton saved it. Ian Allison put in the rebound, and then with a few minutes to go, Les Taylor of Watford got the equaliser, and that was a great experience. And that was it. Boom, go to matches without parents.
I remember it.
Yeah, you go to your mum and say £2.50, please, and that was it. But
I remember when I started going, it was £1 to get in the North Bank.
Yeah, but before then, I was only allowed to go if Dave could take me. My next door neighbour, God bless his soul, and like I said, if I had an appropriate adult. But after that, when you get to a situation when you're 12 allowed to go, that's it. Don't need to ask you no more. Just give me the money, or let me save the money, and that's how it is. Because obviously, I've always lived in. Obviously, I've left the area, but it was like on my handle. It's N. I started in N. I started in N5, then I went in N4, N7, and that's it. So, my motto has always been 1886, not in 1996. But as you said, I've seen it all. God bless his soul. We lost Terry Neal, and for every Arsenal fan my age, Terry Neal was the first Arsenal manager that we associate with. Terry Neal, Don Howe days. When football managers used to be dressed in tracksuit bombers. And do you remember when they used to have the Gazelle trainers? Remember the blue Gazelles? Adidas Gazelle. 3-0 done. Yeah, and if you watch the classic Arsenal matches, you'll see like the blue tracksuit with the Arsenal red socks, and their Terry Neal and Don Howard had the blue gazelles, isn't it? Adidas gazelles. So it was quite in around the late 70s, which when I got into it, and obviously, I remember watching Arsenal when Jimmy Rimmer was our first team goalkeeper.
Yeah, I remember him as well.
You remember Jimmy Rimmer? You remember a young Dave O'Leary, a young Liam Brady. You remember a young Frankie Stapleton, all those sort of players. David Price, legend. I'm surprised Arsenal fans don't know about David Price. I remember Sammy Nelson before Kenny Sampson. So all that team, and I also remember the 7 Irishmen. Like for instance, I can name them all. The 7 Irishmen, because I went to a Catholic school where most of the kids were of Irish background, and they used to always celebrate the fact there were 7 Irishmen: Pat Jennings, Pat Rice, John Devine, David O'Leary, Frankie Stapleton, Liam Brady, and Sammy Nelson. That's it. All 7 of them I named them.
A mate of mine went to that school that you're talking about.
Christ the King,
I used to work with him, and because he was saying to me, he'd seen a stream that we did together once before, and he said to me, Kenny's talking about basically my childhood.
Yeah, that's it. Quite, but it's a thing. It's growing up around Islington, right? For instance, obviously, my stamping ground was Andover Estate, Finsbury Park, Durham Road, Murray Road, Front Little Roads, Holloway Road, Seven Sisters Road, Blackstock Road. That's the area where it's just pure Arsenal, and obviously, Arsenal fans, like they used to congregate, like we're allowed to say it, the EIE, the firms, it was like based around Andover Estate and 6 acres. So, you can't get more Arsenal than that. So that, and obviously, going to, secondary school in Archway, I always got memories of that, lived the, George Graham years when you were in secondary school. He comes in when I'm about, like 14, those areas. And obviously 1989, going to St. Anna Wishes in Archway, those sort of memories when we won the league again at Liverpool, when we had no business winning it. So it's one of those things that it's Arsenal, and I think my brother's the same way as well. He's just as much Arsenal as me. But had it not been for me, 2 people who are dead that were no longer with my mum and David Ed, I don't think my love of Arsenal is purely down to him. And then as soon as I fell in love with the club, I made it my business to know the history of the club, because I think it's a very important thing that you've got to know your club.
Exactly. I 100% agree with you, Kenny, because I remember when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to know everything about it.
But I've got one point of information. Let me tell you something now. The Arsenal pubs are not the 12 pins. They are not the Tollington. The Arsenal pubs are the Duke Edinburgh in Front Hill Road and the Moray just off Moray Road, Durham Road. Now, Duke Edinburgh still exists, although it's changed its name. The Moray don't exist, but those are the Arsenal pubs. Don't let anyone tell you about the what I call the tourist pubs, or pubs like like the Tollington, the 12 pins, or the Gunners. The Arsenal pubs back in the day, before like Arsene Wenger, when George Graham was there, and obviously when Terry was there, was the Duke of Edinburgh and the Moray. I defy anyone to say it isn't. That's where all the big boys come from, mate. In those times, in those sort of pubs, you used to see people like Mickey Doherty there and all the other boys who we all know. They're all there. So it was all the boys, and yes, Mr. God bless his soul, the late Dainton Cannell was there as well. So it's memories. It's Arsenal.
Absolutely, Kenny. Right. So let's get started, Kenny. So the first game you chose was the FA Cup semi-final marathon. Now, the younger viewers, the younger people watching this, back in the day, the semi-final wasn't played over one game, and well, it would if it got a result, but if it ended in a draw, then they would have to have a replay. And he used to keep having replays until we got a result.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's how it used to be back in the day. And as time has gone past, they reduced it. First of all, it was just one replay and then a penalty shootout. And then now that these days they have to get a result in the first match, so they'd go, you'd have your extra time, your penalties, just like it is at the moment in the World Cup. But back in the day, you would play after game after game. And this particular match that Kenny has requested, the 1980 FA Cup semi-final, it took 4 games for them to get a decision about who was going through to the final and would get a winner. So this is the one we're talking about. It was played between the 12th of April and the 1st of May 1980. And as I said, it took 4 matches to reach its conclusion. And the games were played, first of all, at Hillsborough at Sheffield Wednesday's ground, Aston Villa's Villa Park twice, and then finally, I believe it was played at Coventry City's Highfield Road.
That's right. Yeah.
So, Kenny, can you give us a brief breakdown about why you chose this particular match?
There's a kind of a backstory because when I mentioned like the 78, 79 seasons when I thought, right, this is my club, it was poignant that it was the signature game during that season was the games against Liverpool, because as we said before, Liverpool were the best team in the country. They're the best team in Europe. Obviously Nottingham Forest, knocked off their perch with Brian Clough, winning the European Cup in 1979. Liverpool won the league. They were back to win the league as well. But the backstory about it was actually the ties before that, because getting into those semi-finals, we played Watford, Vicarage Road, beat them 2-1. Frank Stapleton got a brace. And Liverpool, they beat Spurs 1-0, where basically it was Terry McDermott basically scored one of the best goals of that season. And the reason why I remember it, because it was on Match of the Day, because I was only 8, and I remember that situation. So obviously when the draw came along, it was quite fascinating, because you had 2 London teams. You had West Ham of East London, you had Arsenal and North London. Then you had the 2 Merseyside teams. So Liverpool were playing Arsenal and Everton were playing West Ham. So you had the prospect of either a all Merseyside Cup final, or London affair, which would be the 3rd time, because obviously in 1975 you had Fulham versus West Ham won 2-0, and obviously you had the first All London Cup final in 1967. So that was part of the stakes. And what I remember, actually, even the Standard, a few days before, when you got it, the Evening Standard, you had all the players from both semi-finals, because there were 2 London teams. You had Arsenal, the squad, and everything. And it's just these kind of memories. But I do remember the first game at Hillsborough, and I do remember the fact that we held Liverpool to a 0-0, and it was kind of a nothing game. But and then a few days later, the replay was at Villa Park, and actually West Ham and Everton, that was a 1-1. That match was 1-1. So they had a replay at the same time. Because their one was at Ellen Road. So it was a case like those matches, if you remember rightly, the first games were played simultaneously.
Yeah.
Semi-finals, and it was the same situation with the replays. They'll play simultaneously as well. Obviously, Frank Lampard Senior scored a winner for for West Ham, putting them in the cup final. But our game 1-1 at Villa Park, where again. There was nothing between the teams, and then obviously we had a replay. And I think the game was actually on a Monday. The third match was on a Monday, so it was a Monday night game.
Let me have a look, Kenny.
I think because So basically, if you look at the games, the game against the first game was a Saturday game simultaneously with West Ham and Everton. And then the replay was Wednesday, as we know. Then obviously it was a Monday night game, because remember we had a kind of congested fixture list, because we were still in the European Cup on this game. Cup.
Right.
So we by that time we were obviously drawn to play Juventus in the semi-finals of the European Cup Winners' Cup. So we had kind of a fixture congestion, because that's another story where probably, if you look at the history books, that probably was what cost us silverware. But it was that game was actually on a Monday. And I remember Kenny Dalglish putting Liverpool up, and then obviously good old Alan again gets the equaliser. So it was one of those games where you got to go to another replay. But if my memory serves me right, that game was the game on the match 3. The game it was the game at Highfield Road was on a Thursday. It was actually a Thursday. So it was a case like you had the game on the Saturday, then you had the game on a Wednesday simultaneously with the other semi-final, and then you had another match on a Monday night because of our fixture congestion, and because we still had the fixture congestion as well. We played Liverpool at Highfield Road, which was quite extraordinary, because you never associate Coventry's ground with the FA Cup semi-final. But I think the reason why they probably had a reduced capacity is because Liverpool and Arsenal fans probably ran out of money having to get all their travel.
All that travelling up and down the country.
I don't think it was really well attended, but what I do remember is the actual goal was actually in the 14th minute. Because obviously I'm an encyclopedia. I actually remember it being really kind of how to say it, a cagey game. But because we scored early, we managed to hang on. It was actually a cross in the byline with Frankie Stapleton. Yes, Frankie Stapleton, who put a perfect cross for Brian Talbot to basically. He actually leaned into the header. He didn't meet it. He had to dive forward and lean into it and head it past in the bottom corner past Ray Clements. And it was a case of like Frank. There's a goal you actually associate with Frank Stapleton, because Frank Stapleton, one of the things that we always associated Frank Stapleton was he was very good in the air. He loved the headed goal. So it was quite ironic that the kind of cross Frankie Stapleton put in for Brian Talbot was a kind of cross that you would love to be the end of. But it's one of those things, because the extraordinary thing about the game and about the score is that we played 70 games that season. And you know what? Brian Talbot played in every game, all of those 70 games.
It's unbelievable.
Brian Talbot played
unbelievable. He played so many games.
Yeah, he played every game. And you can imagine that, after we lost against in penalties to Valencia in Heysel at the Heysel Stadium, that he collapsed. He collapsed right because he played, and that was it. When you talk about players with engines, well, Brian Talbot was the original. I mean, he's a guy we bought from Ipswich Town who actually played in the cup final when they beat us, when Roger Osborne, I hate him by the way, and then a year later he actually scored in the game that we're going to talk about next. But it's quite extraordinary that there was a lot of records that we played 70 games that season, but we ended up getting losers' medals at Wembley against West Ham.
Did you go to the games, or did you listen to them on the radio and TV?
I was young, so I had a situation where my mum wouldn't let me go, so I had to listen to them on the radio. I had to listen to the radio and then watch them on midweek sports special
that's what I did too.
Yeah, midweek sports special and sports night. For instance, the game at Hillsborough, the first game was actually on the big match. Then the replay was on sports night, and then the next two games were on, I think, midweek sports special. Well,
that's right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, so it's one of those games where you just look at it and you think, in the whole contents of that season, I'm not going to take anything away from West Ham, because I think West Ham, made it difficult for us. They scored early on in the cup final. Valencia had players like Mario Kempes, who obviously won the World Cup once here. So, they're probably like the slight favourites, but we had a really good team. But what we did have was we had a very tired team as well. You're not making excuses, but come on, you play 70 games a season and, you don't play your best football in both games. It's down to fatigue. And I think that's the whole situation. Had it been, 10 years later, or had it been like now, Would Arsenal had 4 replays? No. Would Arsenal have played that many games?
No.
Probably not.
We played a ridiculous amount of games. Like, I remember a few months ago, it was me and Del Boy and a few other people, we were talking about the 1979-80 season. And we worked it out, but we were in April and May, we were more or less playing a game every 2 days.
Yeah, that's what happened. You remember, if you're about April, you think about the Easter Monday game where we beat Spurs. Beat Spurs. I think we beat them at home. From the Easter Monday game, we beat Spurs at home. I remember one time Spurs wouldn't let us move the game because obviously we wanted extra time because of we wanted the game to be postponed and moved to another date because of the fact that we just had fixture congestion. So that's another black mark at Spurs. I mean, if you think about it, 1980, 27 years later and 28 years later, Spurs did it to us again. Because you look at the League Cup games in 2007, 2008, we used to sell our tickets at £10 a go. But because Spurs weren't having that, they wanted us to set the price at £30 a go. So it's not the first. So the times when Spurs have, got in our way, started in 1980, but they've done it before. So we got issues with Tottenham. But yeah, Spurs at that time refused to, like I said, postpone the game. It's funny how we got our revenge in last January.
We had to play like a scratch team, didn't we, in the North London Derby game? And we beat them. I think it was Paul Davies made his debut that game.
Paul Davies made his debut as well. So, but let's face it, after Spurs got promoted from the first promoted to the first division from the second division when they got relegated in '77. Let's face it, North London derbies were easy wins for Arsenal. They had, Pat Jennings didn't even concede a goal against Tottenham until early January 1981 when Spurs beat us 2-0 in the North London derby. That's the first time from Pat Jennings ever conceded a goal against Spurs. That's how much we dominated against them. So it's one of those things where, whenever you talk about desert islands games, Spurs have to be involved. They have to be involved. They're our rivals. But saying that, it was, I fell in love with the club even more because I just thought, you know what, we're going to compete again for these big trophies. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Then you think about it, it after 1980, the next cup final we got to was in 1987. We beat Liverpool 2-1 through Charlie Nicholas. We had an FA Cup semi-final and League Cup semi-final in 1983, and that's it.
Yeah.
Over semi-finals.
As well, though, that's like between about 1977 and 1980, we were starting to push Liverpool. But then when we lost Frank Stapleton and Liam Brady, the whole thing just fell apart.
Well, yeah, definitely. And it would fall apart because you think about it. If you think about we got kind of you got to remember that before Terry Neal came to the club, we were actually struggling in the last few years under Bertie Mee, where Arsenal and Tottenham were flirting with relegation. They were finishing between 5th, 14th, and 16th, and and that was when when the Charlie George fell out of Bertie Mee. He went to Derby County. A lot of the 1971 team got a bit old. They weren't getting replaced. George Graham in 1973 went to Man United because when he had a falling out of Bertie Mee. So the team was kind of breaking up. The last decent side we had was 73 when we finished second to Liverpool. And ironically, Spurs did it again. We weren't allowed to compete in the UEFA Cup because Spurs won the League Cup. So they only wanted one team for one city to compete in the UEFA Cup. So Spurs done us again. I mean, for all the times when Spurs blame us for, how do I say it? They blame us for, like buying our way into the first division. They got their revenge quite a few times, haven't they?
Well, they have, yeah, unfortunately. But Kenny, this here is the lineup for the game when we actually managed to finally beat Liverpool in that cup.
There's some great names. There's some great names. You think of it. You think about the thing: Pat Jennings, John Devine. Not Sammy Nelson's not playing in that game. So John Devine, Dubliner. He left us to go into Norwich in 1983. You look at Pat Rice as well. Is his last. We didn't know it at the time. It's his last season because he went to Watford from then. Graham Ricks is a stalwart guy. My mate David Price, who I loved a lot. Brian Talbot as well. Liam Brady, oh God, beautiful player. And then obviously, when you're playing 4-4-2, Alan Sutherland and Frankie Stapleton, like I said, complement each other. And obviously, sub as well. God bless his soul, Paul Vasson. Paul Vasson had to retire at the age of 23 from a knee injury, and he never recovered. He descended into alcohol and drugs, and he's not with us no more because of his problems. And it's sad. It really sad me. It's sad. You can lose your career, and then it can affect you so much that to the extent that you lose your life because of your dependency on that.
So listen, guys, please make sure you go and check out Kenny on Instagram. The link for his Instagram page is in the description of the video, and there's some iconic pictures on there for Kenny. One of Rocky and Charlie George and the three amigos in the top right corner, Bergkamp, Henry and Vieira, Liam Brady and Herbert Chapman. And then of course in the middle with Tony Adams. So yeah, make sure you go and check him out because Kenny enjoys Instagram and he does some brilliant videos on there as well, and reading out the football results and whatnot. I love it when he does that because back in the day, that's how the football results were read out. The fella would come on BBC, final score, going Liverpool 3, Derby County 0. And that's how it used to be, So, Kenny, the second match that you chose was the Arsenal v Man United 1979 FA Cup final. So
yes.
Can you briefly tell us why you chose that particular game?
Well, it's a very iconic game because, we're talking about a time when the FA Cup was the biggest game ever in British football. And the reason why we know it's the biggest game ever because everywhere in the world was watching the cup final. The world stopped for the cup final. You go to Australia, they'll be watching the FA Cup final. You go to Holland, they'll be watching the cup final. France watching the cup final. If you look at how the cup finals abroad now, they base their day on that day. The FA Cup final was the most iconic game ever. It was the only game that was live, apart from the home internationals when England played Scotland, or World Championship games or European Championship games. Apart from a European Cup final involving a British team, that FA Cup final was the game. It was like on both channels, World of Sport, Grandstand, John Motson, Brian Moore. You had Bobby Charlton, who was it was one of the pundits. You had Malcolm Allison on ITV. You had Jimmy Hill over. It was the iconic game. It actually started at 8 o'clock.
It did.
Remember? It started at 8 o'clock. You'd be at a team hotel. They're waking up, having their cornflakes, having their bacon and eggs. You'd be at the team hotel. The fans would be at Wembley already. You'll have all the celebrities, and then you'll have on the world. And what will happen is that the only time you'll have programs like World FA Cup final mastermind. On the other side, you'll have a bit of the wrestling even stopped. You remember that silliness with Kent Walton, that rubbish, that stopped for the FA Cup final. Both channels had the FA Cup. That was the game. Now, if you're like me, the year before when we played Ipswich, whole of Andover Estate, red and white. 1979, the whole of Andover Estate, red and white. But the backstory to that was that season, we had that marathon with Sheffield Wednesday, where we had about a few games as well. I think there was about 3 games, and then when you look at it, you think about the semi-final as well. Man United had their semi-final with Liverpool. They actually drew 2-2 at Main Road, and then Jimmy Greenough won the match at Goodison Park in 1979, and in our semi-final, good old Alan Sunderland and Liam and sort of Frank Stapleton, we beat Wolves, who at that time, I think that's the time when they bought Steve Daly from Man City. There was the biggest transfer was at 1.2 million. So it was that kind of caught my eye, and then obviously the game itself, because when people talk about an iconic game, we need to tell the truth about that game. It was only iconic in the last 5 minutes because we blew them away. Good old Brian Talbot. He's still claiming that goal. I don't know if it's still his goal. I'm sure VAR and goal line technology or like the dubious goals panel would have thought about it and said, Brian, did that really come off you, mate? You know what I mean? But he got the goal, and then Liam Brady on his right foot on the right hand side of the, like I said, on the byline, puts that beautiful cross. Frank Stapleton, signature header, 2-0. That's it. It's over. All right. Man United fans.
That second goal, it was just typical Liam Brady. That's what I used to remember him doing. He'd like dribble in and out of about 2 or 3 players, and then slinging the beautiful cross.
If you remember rightly, I think the left back,
bang, it would be in the back of the net.
The Man United left back, I think, was Arthur Albiston. So I do remember that Man United. But it was one of those things where it was very comfortable. Man United weren't making the inroads, and then I don't know what's happened is that with the last 5 minutes, they actually have a free kick situation, and it's gone up. I think it was down the bar. I don't know whether it was Sammy Rockaway, but I remember Gordon McQueen. God bless his soul. He's ill at the moment. He's got dementia, really serious dementia now. And I pray for him and wish him all the best. But Gordon McQueen pulls it back, and then we were about a minute ago. Somehow Sammy McIlroy, and he didn't even catch it cleanly. That's the thing. It was great skill where he managed to draw out his international colleague Pat Rice, but he went on a bit of a run. And I think if he hit it cleanly, Pat Jennings saves that. But because it was kind of like bounce a couple of times, and it was like a bit of a P roller, like when you play cricket, the P roller, it just into the net. That's when you think, oh my God, no way are we losing this. We're completely comfortable, and you could see the Man United fans going really mad. I remember, was it Bobby Charlton being really up for it, and then because I was watching the BBC One, and then we went down the end, down the other side, right down the end. They're knackered, but Liam Brady thinks, right, we've got to win this. He doesn't want extra time, gets down the sides, puts a beautiful cross, which Gary Bailey misjudged. So he's gone for the ball. He's thinking, oh, no, he's misjudged it. And Alan Sunderland makes a lung-busting run and gets the, not a clean touch, but a good enough touch to just put it into the corner of the net, and that's it. It was bedlam. Every house you went, you on the estate, you are screaming. It
sounds like it was in my house as well, Kenny. Me and my dad dancing around the lounge, shouting and hollering the poor neighbours.
It was screaming. There was noises. There was jigging. Trust me. You go to Hornsey Road. The horns were going. If you went further out, like Seven Sisters Road, the horns were going. All over. All you heard was car horns. That's all you heard. Beep 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 beep. And I thought my team won a cup final. Now, I call it my team, but obviously I fell in love with the club a year after. But I thought, that's wicked, I thought that Arsenal always got to get cup finals. I was kind of spoiled, but that was a really iconic moment because of the fact that it's the FA Cup final, and most importantly, it's the fact that the whole of Vandover Estate got involved in it. you know, I still pitched the flags, and it was like that the year afterwards when we played West Ham. To be honest, it was the same sort of thing, but obviously we were very expectant that we just had to turn out and win. But that's the main thing when I talk about it, iconic game. It wasn't just the match, because let's face it, the match was only exciting the last 5 minutes, but it's the effect it had in the area and the backstory, and I think that's where it is. You always got to talk about the backstory.
Because
And I think
we got three cup finals in a row, didn't we?
And we thought we'd have.
Then the 79, and then the 80, and then as well in 1980 we had the Cup Winners' Cup final as well. So
the irony of it all is the irony of it all is the year afterwards, the next cup finals, that lot were in the cup final.
Yes, I know. And they had Dealers and Ricky Rio, didn't they?
And the thing that killed it, they bloody went and won it twice. I don't know which was worse, their cup final songs or those two cup finals, and then because it was one of those times that where the first time I remember FA Cup final replays, because we had an FA Cup replay three years in a row, you know, where it was all on a Thursday, so that was something new for a young lad like myself. But it was one of those things where you the season afterwards, you know, the 1981 season, you think, yeah, we finished third, but it became clear to me that, yeah, we were in a sort of like what you call it, a footballing recession, where we afterwards, and I think that's the thing. Team broke up. You know, Alan's son left the club. I think Alan's son went to Nottingham Forest. I know, like Willie Young went to Nottingham Forest. I mean, I don't know where Alan's son went, but you know, Pat Jennings was past his best after those times, 79, 80 and everything. So it's one of those times where it seems a transition. I mean, let's not. Do you guys remember George Wood?
Yeah, I do remember George Wood.
Yeah,
I was at him earlier, actually.
Yeah, it was great watching him play for us, isn't it? I mean, he was a brilliant goalkeeper for us. You know what I mean? So it was one of the things where, when you think about those two games I mentioned, you know, the FA Cup's semi-finals against Liverpool and previous year to that, 1979, it's one of those things where when you look back on it.
Kenny, did you manage to get a ticket for the cup final?
Well, the first, again, I was young.
79 one.
Believe it or not, my first cup finals were actually when I was the Littlewoods Cup final.
Right.
Littlewoods Cup final. So then, obviously, a cup finals, because you're at an age where money wasn't great. Remember, if you think about it, you know, we remember the 3 day week. We were at, you know, it was like the winter of discontent around 79.
That's right. I remember, yeah.
And the thing about it, right, is that you needed someone to take to cup finals and someone who wanted to go, because I think what's happened is that obviously, you know that time when there's cup finals, like they used to say, right, tickets go on general sale outside the ground about a Monday, and first come first served basis. Now, someone who's at primary school, where he's meant to be at school, there's absolutely no chance of me doing that. You know what I mean? The parents
exactly right.
So it was one of those things. You went, right, how am I going to do that? And then
I know it, because
and then when I got in my 20s, I was the era of the. Do you remember the times when we were a very successful team under Arsene Wenger, where it was basically all season ticket holders sent a stamped addressed envelope, a self-addressed envelope with a stamp, and send a blank check and say Arsenal Football Club, Arsenal box office, and you used to put down a blank check, and you used to basically put the pound signs, and they used to fill the money. They used to ask you to put your bank details on the back of the check, and then they filled it in for you, and then you used to get your ticket in that envelope. To remember it, you know. In those sort of like,
remember the little tokens in the back of the program as well.
Yeah,
like I remember game, they print a little token in the program, and you'd have to collect the tokens. First of all, I think there was 24 of them, and it was like, first of all the people with 24 tokens, have to come on this particular day. Then it was 23, then it 22, and then it finally went down to 21, and then it all sold out.
It's the things we used to do. Now it's basically like, if you've got points, you can get a cup final ticket, or if you're a season ticket holder, you've got no points, you go in a little ballot and you'll play. Please don't do this to me. You know what I mean? And you think you basically curse Wembley, say, mate, please, for God's sake, can you tell the Football Association of Lancashire not to have tickets because they don't really want to go to the game? Can you give it to the fans? Because FA Cup final tickets just. That's why I prefer League Cup finals in terms of like for fans, because we're all going to get a ticket. But for the FA Cup final, unless you've got points,
back in the day, the cup final, it'd only be about 40% of the ground would be for fans. The rest of it was like corporate and special guests and things like that. So, Kenny, this is the team that played that day. So
if you look at it. Obviously, we spoke about Big Pat in goal. He was actually, obviously, let's face it, Big Pat loved us, loved them. Big Pat loved dare I say, he loved Spurs. He was a Spurs man. He left because Spurs wouldn't give him a new contract. If they didn't give him a new contract, he wouldn't have played for us. But he gave us 8 years of great service. David O'Leary, stalwart. When people talk about Tony Adams, they forget about the contribution that David O'Leary made to the football club. And also you've got Willie Young. How can you forget Willie Young? Another player that came from Tottenham as well. Pat Rice, iconic. Sammy Nelson, still, I don't know, is Sammy still with us?
I don't know where he is, but what I remember...
I know he's from Sussex. I know he lived in Brighton, because when he left, he lived in Brighton.
Yeah, he went to Brighton. But what I remember about Sammy Nelson was that incident in front of the North Bank when he showed a certain part of his anatomy to the North Bank.
He showed everyone his ass. But if you look at Sammy, exactly. The iconic thing about Sammy Nelson is that his daughter is actually married to Matt Pryor, the ex-England wicketkeeper.
He's what? Sorry,
Sammy Nelson's daughter. Sammy Nelson is Matt Pryor's father-in-law.
Really?
Yes.
Blimey, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sammy Nelson, after he left Arsenal, he settled in Brighton. God bless his soul. Terry Neal moved to Brighton as well. So it's one of those things where it's a bit of trivia. But Brian Talbot, joined us from Ipswich Town in 1978. Again, he was a stalwart, scored one of the goals. David Price, how can you forget David Price? I love David Price,
mate. He was so underrated, that fella. That's my opinion, because I remember him being another one that was an absolute workhorse. He would run and run and run, and he was talented as well.
Yeah, but you obviously got Liam Brady playing inverted winger, and Graham Ricks another one. Let's not forget. We used to always have this song at the Arsenal where we used to sing, "We all agree, Rixie's better than Hoddle," and he wasn't.
Yeah, I remember that.
he wasn't really, but Graham Ricks had a great skill, great panache as well.
He went to the '82 World Cup, didn't he? Do you remember?
Yes, he did. Yeah, it was actually part of Ron Greenwood's squad as well. Because you remember when England beat Norway in the World Cup qualifiers 4-0, Graham Ricks had a whale of a time, and he had a great game. So, Graham Ricks was fantastic for us. But if you look at it, the same stalwarts, Sunderland and Stapleton again up front, and let's not forget our substitute who actually came on was Stevie Walford. Now we all know Stevie Walford for the fact that he's wherever Martin O'Neill is, him and John Robertson are, and Steve Guppy. So Stevie Walford's always has followed Martin O'Neill everywhere, but Stevie Walford was a good servant for our football club. Great, he's an East End boy. But he's one of our own. So you always, you can know the iconic picture of Stevie Walford celebrating with on a bench when Frank, Steve Walford came on, but actually, it wasn't Steve Walford. It was actually John Devine. John Devine, the iconic in celebrations, John Devine and Terry Neal celebrating when Alan Sunderland scored that goal. But Steve Walford definitely won a great stalwart for the football club. And obviously, he's Martin O'Neill's eyes and ears.
It was a great day, Kenny. I mean, I remember the game, but then the celebrations in my house went on for like a good couple of hours. Do you know what I mean? And like the records went on, the windows got flung open, and all the neighbours knew we were Arsenal fans. Let's put it that way.
The thing about it is that if you look at the FA Cup final, the weather it's the weather as well, because it was like a boiling. It must have been about 20 degrees when the match was played, which is good for England because obviously we don't associate balmy nights. We obviously with global warming, obviously it's not as cold as it was in the 70s, and it's more hot. The summers are scorching hot. See, Jez is just talking about him getting his tickets from the tokens as well. So Jez remembers that as well. How he got his cup final tickets, but it's iconic times. Obviously
it was.
It's iconic times, and I think when you look at Arsenal and you think about it, is that one of the saddest things with social media at the moment is that there's no active channel that I can pinpoint which says, you know what, it's all right being an Arsenal fan. It's all right to be an old school fan, because I think what's happening now is that everyone wants everything fast. They don't want to know about Arsenal. It's boring. No. Anything before Thierry Henry doesn't exist, and I think it's a shame.
I know.
You know what I mean?
It saddens me, Kenny, because if you don't take the effort to find out about your club, you can't really get into the culture of it and appreciate it properly. I don't see how it's possible. But people, they can support their club the way they want to support it, obviously. But for me, it's all part and parcel of it. Those steps up to the main entrance, in the old ground, and the guy standing outside with the suit and the hat on, and it's just that ground, man. It's heartbreaking to see that we're not still there. It really I'm sorry.
I hate you saying, but practically, we had no choice. We had no choice but to leave the ground. I think we've got to remember that, because you think about it, the times we're talking. Let's remember, if you think about Arsenal during those times when I first started going and when you first started going, we actually had a capacity of 60,000.
That's right.
The old Highbury, if you look at the times when it was full, it wasn't really full. There was a odd game where it was 51,000, 54,000. I remember it when I was a teenager, the 54,000 games against Liverpool, 51,000 games against Man United. But really and truly, even there was times when North London derbies were 48,000 tops. So I think what's happened is that it was a reflection of the teams. And I think we started packing Highbury when George Graham started coming to the club, you know what I mean, where we were winning. So I think in terms of like us having a move for Highbury, the club sold it really well. But in a sort of business sense, at the time, our only competitors was Man United, and they were out basically outspending us, because they, Man United's built up in an area of Salford, which is nowhere near industrial, houses, residential houses. Highbury residential. So you only got to remember what happened when these nosy Parkers used to go on Thames News trying to project to our planes. So we did try to stay at Highbury, but local residents weren't with us.
That because they tried it, didn't they try and do some sort of compulsory purchase of properties or something?
Yeah, and they weren't.
Residents didn't go for it.
Yeah, of course not. And right, so some of them were Man United fans who didn't want to leave. But Highbury, when I was growing up, there's certain parts of Highbury was where lawyers and barristers lived, and they weren't having that, were they?
No, exactly. And there's pictures here of the fans at the cup final and whatnot, Kenny.
You see that a lot of those fans would have been all over the country because we travelled well, but quite a few of those fans would have been from the Hanover estate, from the States and Highbury, and like from Camden, and let's not forget, even then we had fans from places like Cockfosters, Welwyn Garden City. So the Arsenal diaspora. You've got to remember the Arsenal diaspora obviously is Islington. A majority of fans lived in the Islington area, and obviously a few lived in Camden, a few lived in Haringey. But we still had this diaspora around the home counties, because obviously the war in it. After the war and after the war, when they want to build new towns, Londoners move over to those places.
That's right, and people moved out. Because good mate of mine, he came. Well, his family moved down to Kent, obviously, before he was born, but they lived in East London, right in the heart of East London. They knew when his dad was growing up, he knew the craze and stuff like that,
Yeah, and that's the thing, people move out, but, the club dies. But, majority of our fans base still come from Islington. And I think what's happening now is we asked the Arsenal name. It transcends Islington. A lot of young lads support Arsenal because of the fact that we play beautiful stuff under our sin, and obviously they're attracted to Ian Wright being a club. So you know what I mean? It's one of those things.
Yeah. So just to remind everyone, make sure you go and follow Kenny Ken on Instagram. The link for it is in the description. Go and look in the description and just click on it, and it'll take you to his Instagram page. And Kenny does brilliant stuff on there. Kenny, do you want to just tell him what you do on your Instagram page?
Well, it all happened by accident, really, because a good friend of mine, God bless his soul, Pro Bree, said to me, "Look, you know so much about football." I said, "Do me some videos," and he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, go on Instagram." I said, "What for?" He said, "Because you'll get more traction that you won't get on Twitter." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah. People actually talk to each other on Instagram." I said, "Well, isn't it Facebook?" Because I wasn't a big fan of Facebook. He went, "No, just give it a try." So why not? And since it was the best decision I ever made, because it was kind of a thing. I said, right, it was. I used to do. Obviously, I've always done me sort of after match stuff with involving Arsenal, and I've always put the odd video for a laugh. But I think it was during lockdown. I got really down during lockdown when all the games every game was live because we couldn't go to the games, and I thought actually the first game I actually commented on was actually Man United and Brighton, and that was the game when Man United, where the final whistle went, and but because the final whistle went, when the referee's about to blow the final whistle, a handball occurs. So if you blow the final whistle and there's a handball or a penalty situation, you have to do a sort of mastermind thing, start before you finish. And since then, did the commentary and it gets traction. And then what I do is I get little newspaper clippings or headlines, and I give my comments, and I get traction. So
yeah, I've noticed that you get stuff up on Sky Sports, and then you make a comment about it, or Talk Sport or whatnot, and I love it. I absolutely love it. You talking about what they're talking about and whatnot, and it's great.
Yeah. So I never knew that I was going to get that kind of traction. And since then, you know what's happened when if people encourage you, you carry on, isn't it?
So go and check that out, everyone, because it's absolutely superb. Kenny's brilliant with what he does on Instagram, and I personally absolutely love it. I really do. Anyway, so Kenny, the third game that we're going to talk about is the Boxing Day North London derby in 1983 between Tottenham and Arsenal. Now, it was played at White Hart Lane, but there's an interesting backstory to this game, because in the run-up to this game, our form was absolutely horrendous, wasn't it? Do you remember?
Well, it's funny you say that because you know when I was backstage, you had all the results from the 83, 84 season.
I'm just going to bring it up because I want people to see it, right?
Because if you look at that season, we just bought Charlie Nicholas from Celtic. He scored 62 goals. And we thought we were getting a striker. We didn't realise that we were getting a Peter Beardsley type, who basically was more of an assist man, an actual striker. But it was a season, obviously, where it was just horrendous because obviously we finished 11th the season before, got to two cup semi-finals, got beaten by Man United. Let's face it, we got beaten by Man United comfortably. It was an embarrassing season. Let's not forget Spartak Moscow, where we lost 5-2 at home.
Yeah,
the kind of ties of discontent were circulating. You know, that team got ripped apart. Frank Stapleton went to Man United. I'll never forgive him for that. But we've got players like David Hawley after Frank Stapleton left. Then we got Lee Chapman. Oh, God help me out. But in between that, we had Kenny Sampson. Pat Jennings was past his best.
Did we have a bloke called Ray Hankin playing up front, Kenny, as well?
Yeah, we had players like Ray Hankin. We were a terrible team, but one of the brightest parts of our team is that players like Raphael Mead were coming through. Players like Chris Huggy White was coming through as well. Yeah. Then you had obviously you had players like Stuart Robson coming through, which was good players. But what happened is that we had no leaders, and then we had some horrendous results. The first time I knew something was wrong, we lost to Sunderland at home, 2-1. Tony Adams made his debut in that game, and obviously we lost at home to Coventry. A player called I don't know. It was a guy called Dave Bamber scored. Terry Gibson was left Spurs during that game. He at the Coventry game. We lost at home to West Brom, Walsall. We did all the hard work of beating Spurs and Spurs. Ironically, Charlie Nicholas scored his first goals for us. Bloody hell, took a bit of time in it. And it was one of those things where Tony Woodcock got the second goal, and then Gary Rabbit scored Tottenham. And you thought we'd finally turn a corner, but it's not acceptable. Those home defeats, I mentioned Coventry, Sunderland, West Brom. You lose to Walsall. Terry Neal had to go. He had to go.
Yeah, it was really bad, and
it was really bad. And then
I think
I remember it being in the news where like on the local news, like basically you had we didn't have the you had Thames News, and you had BBC South East, which covered London obviously predominantly, and obviously, but it was a case that there was discontent. Fans were booing. Fans were going to the town hall, obviously. About it. I remember it vaguely, but I do remember actually it was a Friday. It was Friday I think it was Friday the 16th of December 1983 that basically it was you heard something in the news where he said Arsenal manager Terry was left the club, and then my next door neighbour's girlfriend said, "Did you hear it, Kenny? Terry Neal's got the sack." I said, "Yeah, it's just on the news." And then obviously Terry Neal, said that he wishes the club the best, and Peter Hillwood, didn't want to do it. And actually, Peter Hillwood actually wanted to keep Terry Neal. He wanted to give him more time, but the majority shareholder at the time, a guy from Northwest London called David Dean, was the one who said no, sack him. It was David Dean who actually pushed for the sacking. Peter, let's not get it straight. Peter Hillwood wanted Terry Neal to have more time because he felt loyalty to Terry Neal because of those cup runs in sort of the late 70s, early 80s, and he thought that if anyone could turn our bad form around, it was Terry Neal. But it was David Dean who said no, who was the casting vote and pushed for his sacking. So that's when he got sacked, and then Don Howe got the job on a sort of interim basis. But if you remember the game afterwards, the day afterwards, on the 17th of December, we played Watford at home, where a guy called Paul Price got sent off, but Rafael Mead got a hat trick. Rafael Mead of Hornsey Rise, my next door neighbour's best mate, got an hat trick in that game. So you think, all right, no problem. And then the next game was a North London derby. So if you think about that, both teams, Spurs went in great form as well, because they were nowhere near the sides they were in that 83, 82, everything. So they were struggling a bit, but they still had players like Glenn Hoddle. They still had Graham Roberts. They still had Archibald. Garth Crooks, I think, went on loan to Man United, but they still had a crutch of a good team. Mark Falco was playing that team. So they were the hot favourites for that derby. But I remember it being at 11:30 because the police, rightly so, weren't having Arsenal and Spurs fans after a day after Christmas Day being anywhere near each other at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock,
Kenny, right? Because it wasn't on TV because it was so early. It was
that's right.
It was 11:30 kickoff, right? And I was shocked. It was the first time, I think, because I was 17 at the time. 16 I was, and I was shocked that we'd won because our form had been so bad. And usually when we play Spurs, I get really nervous about the match.
Don't we all, you know what I mean?
And I was shocked we beat them. I really was, and to be a 4-2 victory as well,
Yeah.
Like 16th or something in the table before the game.
We mind you, remember we had a bit of confidence because remember Rafael Mead got his hat trick. Terry. Remember Tony Woodcock was injured, so Rafael Mead playing that game. He got his hat trick. Against Watford. Obviously, Paul Price got set off in a 3-1 win for the Arsenal. So going into that game, even though Spurs were the hot favourites, even though we beat them already in the cup, it was a case where we were there for the taking. But I think what's happened, if you look at the game itself, it was like Chinikas gets the first goal. I believe it was like a little lob over Clements, and then it's early on in early on in the first half. Graham Roberts scores from a free kick situation. I think where he's unmarked, and then we go 2-1 up for like Big Raf. So I think it was China that scored again. It's called it's actually Big. I think Big Raf got the second, and then Steve Archibald smashed it in the roof of the net, and then Spurs actually got a goal disallowed to put them 3-2 up, going into half time because to put them 3-2 up in the second half because I remember it being disallowed and Archibald putting them on the net, and then our guys again, Big Raf and Tiny Nicholas made it 4-2. But I do remember that game, but thinking, you know what? Two things it told me that we could revive our season to a respectable season. We actually did. We finished sixth that season, but the cuts were still a disappointment because the third round in the FA Cup, a week later, we lost 3-2 to Middlesbrough. So it was one of those things where
I was at that game, Kenny. I went to Middlesbrough for that cup match. Gee, I was in there. I was in the home end. Jesus.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where Charlie Nicholas actually got one of the goals. It's a superb goal he scored, actually, with his left foot.
Yeah, he did. He slapped it in from almost on the byline and bang.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we finished a respectful sixth. So, Don Howe did kind of turn it around. But, it was on that basis that he got the job on a full-time basis. But you know how it ended with Don Howe because, he left in 86 because we were blatantly going behind his back to try and offer the job to Terry Venables. But what we didn't know is that they actually interviewed Sir Alex Ferguson as well. So it wasn't just Terry Venables that's
interesting because I heard as well that we were trying to get Bobby Robson to come.
Well, yeah. That I think that was kind of a few years afterwards, before Arsene. That was actually before Arsene came. We were saying that Bobby Robson. At the time, Terry Venables was actively approach to be the Arsenal manager. And because I remember Don Howe leaving around Easter 1986, and Steve Birchinshaw became our caretaker manager. And Arsenal, David Dean, obviously him again, was blatantly standing out Terry Venables, because it was definitely one of the reasons why Don Howe left. But let's face it, we needed to do something different, because Don Howe was a safe pair of hands. But if you look at where we're finishing, his first full season, we finished 7th, and we were going to finish 7th again. And we were nowhere near winning any trophies. So it was a safe pair of hands. One thing Don Howe did do is that, he gave David Rocastle his debut. He brought along the 1980s. And let's not forget, when you talk about the 1980s, this team, and you talk about the contributions Don Howe and Terry Neal made, let's not forget that Don Howe and Terry Neal brought on players like Tony Adams, Martin Keown, John O'Shea, players like Stuart Robson, Raphael Mead, Chris Huggy White, Michael Thomas.
For me, the thing about Don Howe was that he was a great coach, but I don't think he was a particularly good manager.
He wasn't a good manager, but let's not forget those players came through under, see, that's an iconic name as well. You think about it, the iconic name as well is, that Ray Lewis. Because if you remember Ray Lewis, he actually, God bless his, God bless their souls. He was actually the referee at Hillsborough.
Yeah.
89. So yeah, when I saw the name Ray Lewis, I thought, oh yeah, that kind of light, was a light bulb moment. But
see, this is the league table.
From
the 16th of December, when Terry Neal got sacked.
Yeah, so that's
and
the thing.
Like 5 points off relegation.
You think about it, the season before that, you look at Watford in 19th. The season before that, the previous season, Watford finished second to Liverpool, albeit by 12 points. So that's a bit of a turnaround as well. As you can see, Man United actually were threatening to win the league that season. Didn't happen. And obviously, West Ham were going strong there. You can see
Coventry, QPR, Norwich.
You think about it, that's where QPR finished, where QPR were in that season. They actually finished that season in 5th place, and it's the fact that they got to UEFA Cup, and they actually played their games at Highbury, because
that's right.
UEFA,
I remember that.
UEFA wouldn't let QPR play their matches on the AstroTurf at Loftus Road.
That's right. They wouldn't. No. So yeah, there we go. Look, Terry Neal out, and Don Howe was brought in on the 16th of December. So yeah, is there anything else you want to say about that match, Kenny?
One of the things is that as much as we were a bit frustrated and bored of Don Howe, let's not forget. I always say managers have to leave good foundations, and George Graham was left fantastic foundations by Don Howe and Terry Neal, because you think about the players that inherited. He went with a very young side when he won the League Cup in 1987, and part of those players that were coming through, obviously, were players like Tony Adams. Obviously, they didn't play that iconic game of choice, but let's not forget Tony Adams, Martin Hayes, Michael Thomas, obviously Rocky as well. To name but a few, were part of that setup, and obviously inherited players like Viv Anderson we experienced, and Dave O'Leary, and he had Johnny Lukic as well. Because if you look at that game, in 1983, December 1983, that's when Pat Jennings was a bit past his best, but he was just about keeping Johnny Lukic out of the team, who we bought from Leeds, I believe, during that season. So it's one of the things.
Don't forget to follow Kenny on his Instagram. It is brilliant, as we said a few minutes ago. Sorry, Kenny, what was you saying?
No, I'm just saying that, when you think about those times under Don Howe, it wasn't all bad. And, George Graham was left with really good foundations. He had players who came from the youth system, a brilliant youth system. And, that's what kept us in good stead. And I think, as I said before, good managers leave the club in a better state when they left it.
That's true. They do, and the Don Howe left a good basis for which George could work on, and it also happened. Larson, when he came in, he built on the foundations that George had left as well. Yeah. So, you know, he inherited that famous back four. Or have you built? We're coming on to your next game, which was the game on the 23rd of October, 1999 in the Premier League between Chelsea and Arsenal. Now, before we start talking about this, I'm just going to play something for you. I've got a little surprise for you, but I want you to watch this.
Well, it's broken Kanu's way, and De Huey's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it? He's flattened Chelsea. He's hit a hat-trick at Stamford Bridge. This is simply extraordinary.
You know what? That
Kenny?
You know, he is an icon because you remember if you look at I call it the Canu match. Any Arsenal fan, it was actually a season we didn't win anything. The season afterwards, you think about it, the backstory is that obviously we got Kanu at the club in the sort of like the. I think, well, in the early 1999, let's not forget, remember his game, remember the Sheffield United game where we actually won the game, and there was no reason for that game to be replayed. Arsene Wenger was very generous, but he was involved in not.
Oh, Kenny's gone. Kenny's gone, everyone. Probably an issue with these internet, but I'm going to talk to you about what I remember about this game. Right, Arsenal played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. I think he's back. Yeah, he's back. Hold on, guys. Hold on, I've lost control of my mouse. You all right, Kenny?
Yes. Sorry about that.
No, don't worry. It's fine.
If you think about it, we actually bought Kanu from, I think it was International in RA.
Yeah, we did.
And, you know, because he obviously had the heart condition. And, you know, that season, he was actually quite a bit of a lucky charm for us because he was coming off the bench. He was getting the odd goal here and there. And he was actually turning games. Like when Bergie was tired, he used to come on and do exactly what Bergie did, but in a sort of more advanced role. But it was a case where that game itself was kind of a mad game. It's actually a mad season as well because, you know, we the season before that we narrowly lost the league championship to Man United, and it was one of the things where Man United did a treble, but let's face it, if Man United didn't beat us at Villa Park, they may not have won the treble. We might have won a double. That's the irony about it. It was close margins, but that game itself, it was quite a funny season because you think about it, there were games that it was a season where, you know, where even though we would finish second, we finished a poor second of Man United and we lost, you know, London derbies to Tottenham. I was at the game, North London derby. I don't want to go on about talk about that one. And that's certainly not one of my Desert Island games. And also we lost.
No,
we also lost 2-1. We also lost to West Ham. But we lost to West Ham as well, 2-1 as well, where we got Di Canio, and then Patrick Vieira got set off and he had a bit of a spat with Neil Ruddock. So
yeah, I remember that.
It's one of those games where, you know, it was a season when Thierry Henry first came to the football club where he couldn't hit a barn door. Hence the fact that, as you can imagine, you know, we called it Canoe match, but at that time we had no faith in Thierry Henry. I mean, how stupid were we? We thought, you know, Thierry Henry came to the club and there was this guy called John, and I'm going to embarrass him because, you know, I love it a bit. I love his daughter Jo as well. They're like a family, and every time Thierry Henry came on the pitch, and we used to sing like Thierry Henry, John used to go, waste of money. We used to go, Thierry Henry. And John used to go, waste of money, waste of money. Thierry Henry. And he'd go, waste of money, waste of money. You know, let's not forget, Thierry was stat bad. His first game was awful. He couldn't hit a barn door against Leicester City. And, you know, by that time, by a Chelsea game, he actually scored his first goal against Southampton. But I think it was a case where he was on the bench, and you know, the front two was wasn't Thierry. It was either Davos Suker, who he bought as well that season, and Carnu, or Carnu and Bergkamp. Thierry was basically out of sight. He was on a sub because he needed to learn a game. But that game itself is that it was a part of the times when we had the Indian rubber sign over Chelsea, where Chelsea were, you know, we used to get results against Chelsea home and away. But this Chelsea side was quite a confident side, because remember, they finished third and only about a point behind us the season before. And, you know, they had Gianluca Vialli, they had those, you know, everyone talks about Chelsea having those big names under Abramovich. Well, they had some big names then. They had Desai playing that game. They had players from all over the world. Vialli, they had Zola playing for that team. They had Torre Flo, Graham.
Look at the league table. This was the league table as it was before we played that game. They were 3 points, 2 games in hand. Yeah. So if they'd won both of those games, they would have gone above us.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
It's the irony of it. They were a very, very good team. They had very good players, and arguably, what's happening is that they had players who were as good as ours, but we had the kind of steel which they couldn't compete with. But that game itself, if you look at it, in terms of the game itself, they were actually battering us. They were playing some beautiful stuff. They scored 2 good goals. I think Graham So got one of the goals, and Torre Flo got one as well. And they're actually two. They're actually headers. So we're 2-0 up, and going into the game, it was really comfortable for them. You know, like I said, we made kind of a substitution out of desperation. Really, I think we took off Davos Suker and brought on Carnu, and then I think it was the 75th minute. Marco Overmars has a shot. It gets blocked, and actually it's Carnu who blocks it. But he actually blocks it, has a bit of space, and because he's got the long legs, he actually toe pokes it past the Hoy. And
that's right.
So he actually
this is the first
podcast. So he actually toe pops it past the Hoy.
Yeah, that's right. That's the first one, and that was in the 75th minute. And you're right, he did toe poke it.
Right. And then the second goal was actually Mark Overmars was playing on the right hand side, and he actually cuts in, puts an inverted cross with his left foot. Carlu has a good first touch, gets past his marker, I think it's Desai, and smashes it with a lot of power into past the Hoy, and it's 2-2, and 2-2, and you're thinking, hello, we can actually win this. And then
exactly.
Before you know it, it was one of those things where you think, where there was one time, right, when he was actually on a corner, when he was actually down the byline, I was thinking, hang on here, who's that run with pace? I thought, hang on, that's Henry. And I went, hang on here, that's Carnu. No way. It's
look, he's right out there, and then for some reason, he came right out of his goal. I don't know why he did that.
I don't know why the Hoy did it, but what's happened is that goal is iconic. The way the Hoy comes out, and Carnu with great close control beats him, then gets to the byline, gets near the byline, and basically he has only one part of the goal aim at. It's got to be in the corner net. If it's any lower, he don't score. If it's in the middle of the net, it gets clear of the line. But for him to have the wherewithal to get the ball, beat his man, but still get in a corner net is one of the best goals I've ever seen, and one of the iconic moments as well.
It was mad.
It was
absolutely mad. It was, Kenny, and like you're right when you said that they they were cruising. There were goals from Flo and Petrescu. They looked completely in control. No danger of losing it. And then all of a sudden, in the 75th minute, it all fell apart, and we snatched it. But those goals were just unbelievable, and especially the third one, it was an absolute madness.
Because at the time, it was one of those things where you're screaming and shouting, you're going absolutely berserk. But one of the moments was Dennis Bergkamp came on the pitch after the match. He was wiping Carney's boots for him, and that was just a beautiful, beautiful sight. Beautiful sight. But to beat Chelsea, who at the time, let's face it, they were going for the league that season. Obviously, Man United won at a Canton, we finished second, a very poor second to them. We didn't win it for the season. But when you think
Kenny, were you confident, like on the day of the match, that we were going to go there and win?
At the time, I was, because of our record against Chelsea, but I wasn't confident after 2-0, being 2-0 down. I was thinking, take your medicine like a man, and like I said, have no complaints. But if you remember, the ironic thing about it is the season afterwards, we were 2-0 down at Chelsea as well. Remember that game? The season afterwards, I was actually in Falaraki, and we were 2-0 down against Chelsea. Jimmy Floyd Housebank got one of the goals. Henry equalises the same around the sort of 70th, around the 80th minute. And then the last kick of the game, like I said, last kick of the game, the man without what's his name again? Was it the guy who's Silvino?
That's the fella, yeah.
Silvino,
the one with the dodgy passport.
Dodgy passport did a banana shot. So it was the season afterwards we broke Chelsea's hearts again. But this game, it has to be iconic. Not only were we 2-0 down, a 15-minute hat trick, and all the goals were actually great.
It's unbelievable. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just crazy.
There were iconic goals where he just basically, individual goals. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't as if there were clear-cut chances. The first goal he made himself, and he used all his 6'4" reach to toe park it past De Hoy. The second goal was basically speed of foot and then power. And the third goal was just skill, pure and unadulterated skill. And one of those things where you think, when you think about iconic games, you have to include that. You have to include that because, don't get me wrong, there's going to be bigger games which that lead to trophies. But that game itself, you have to look at it and think, you know what? If you want to think about a memorable game, I remember that time on BBC One where they used to have 100 great sporting moments. And if you'll have Eintracht Frankfurt against Real Madrid. Real Madrid 7, Eintracht Frankfurt 3. Had the Ronnie Radford situation as well. Radford.
That's right.
Yeah. God bless his soul. He's not with us. He died recently. But we're having that kind of own version of the BBC's 100 Great Moments. And I think sometimes the 100 Great Moments don't actually lead to anything. Although, remember, Ronnie Radford,
this goal, it was be the sort of thing maybe another 20 years, it will come up on a question of sport as what happened next. Remember that?
Yeah, but you see, it's all these iconic situations, and that's one of the reasons why I look at our history, and we've got a rich history. It wasn't. Don't get me wrong, it's not all bad, but for someone like myself who's 50 years old now, I know that there was a life before Arsene, and there was definitely a life before the Premiership. Or dare I say, August 1992, and Arsenal were very much part of that. But
that's right.
Remember, we can't win a trophy every season, but what we can do is that there are some games you think, yeah, I remember them. All right, and we may not have won anything that season, but those games stuck out for me, and I think those are sort of games that you think about. a neutral who don't like who likes football, doesn't know who to support. It's those games. It's games like that you can turn you into an Arsenal supporter. It didn't turn me into Arsenal. I was already at Arsenal, but someone can watch these games we've just chosen or any iconic games and think, yeah, that's when I fell in love with the club.
Yeah, me too. It's just unbelievable. These sorts of games, which will live in people's memories forever because it was so mad what happened. In the space of 15 minutes, we went from being dead and buried to winning the bloody game, and it was all because of that one fella. And especially the third goal, it was just unreal. It was unbelievable. So, Kenny, is there anything else you want to say about that particular game before we move on?
I think if you look at that game, Arsenal, we now know was in transition. We know that the great team that won the double in 1998 broke up. Nicolas Anelka decided that he didn't want to be part of our iconic team. He wanted to earn his money in Real Madrid. Des Bergkamp was still there. He was still a great player, but I think Manu Petit. I think Manu Petit was still at the club, but he is still part of that midfield. But he was on a bit of a wane. And Manu Petit was part of the club. But if you think about it, him and Overmars at that time were pushing for moves. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. You look at the team. David Seaman, iconic. He's probably the best goalkeeper we've ever had. Then Savinho, our mate Savinho and my out of passport, Keown Adams. That was a great defensive partnership. Left back is our right back. Lee Dixon, great servant for us. Nutty Wimbledon, you see, I think Nutty Wimbledon, Winterburn, this was his last season before he went to West Ham. And then you've got Mark Overmars as well, who was Mark Overmars, Petit, Parla. Remember, Vieira was suspended because of his West Ham. Freddie Lundberg as well, playing that team. And obviously you had, as I said, Davor Suka, Kanu and Davor Suka. So it was one of those things that when we lost Anelka, we bought Henri and Davor Suka, and obviously we had Kanu. So we thought we were gonna, be able to challenge Man United, but Man United was still a great side. They still had Cole. So they still had Ashley Cole and York. They still had Giggs and Beckham. So
we've got those subs there, Kenny. We've got Wolford. I don't think that's right. I think that's right. No. But we've got Venezia.
Part of Venezia. I remember that. I remember him. Part of Venezia. He went to Watford. Nelson, Nathan Vivas, the assassin. The assassin.
Yeah. And then Thierry Henry as well.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. It's what I was mentioning as well. Thierry Henry was very much like learning his trade, and he wasn't really trusted to play up front. But there was a game a few games after that when Thierry Henry finally played up front, scored 2 goals against Derby, never looked back. I was at the game. I was a season. Obviously, I've got a season ticket, but it was a Sunday game. We beat Derby 2-1. Thierry Henry got both the goals. From then on, Thierry Henry was our centre forward alongside Bergkamp. Kanu went on the bench. Sorry, Kanu, but Thierry Henry's the main man there.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right. Okie doke. So let's move on. Don't forget, everyone, go and check out Kenny's Instagram. You'll find the link inside the description. So just click on it and you'll be able to go and see what he gets up to because it's impressive. Now, they're saying 4-0, so I'm guessing that's the World Cup game.
No, not at all. Not at all. I've got a video printer in the back of me, eyes in the back of my end, which is called a video printer. It's 5-1 now to Portugal.
Oh my God!
Yeah. And believe it or not, Cristiano Ronaldo hasn't scored any goals. He's come on in the last 15 minutes. 15 minutes, where it's 5-1, and his replacement scored an hat-trick.
Oh, wait! Wow.
Who's going to be the Portuguese coach when team selection is discussed when they play their quarterfinal against Morocco.
I know. That's going to be interesting, I think. Right. So the last game, Kenny, match number 5 is Barcelona against Arsenal in the 2006 Champions League final. So I'm pretty sure I know the reason you chose this, but because it's probably the same reason I would have chose it. But do you want to tell everyone why you chose this particular game, Kenny?
Well, the thing about it is that I now know. I even at that time, I thought that would be my only chance to go to a Champions League final. And for someone who's loved the club loved the club, and was born in the club, it had to be an iconic game. If you think about the games that pain you when Arsenal lose, and you get really upset, but I haven't got over that losing that Champions League final. I didn't realise at the time how much I wanted to be there when we won the Champions League. I kind of realised that it would be a rarity that we'd get a Champions League final. So for me, my attitude was when I got there and after the match that I was going to make the most of it because it's a Champions League final. We're playing Barcelona, Ronaldinho, players like, Van Bommel, who was in goal. They had Vitor, they had Ludovic Juli. So in terms of that game, I had to make the most of it. And again, it's iconic. We were brilliant in the Champions League that season. Ashley Cole got injured. We injured his leg, although he made sure he was fit enough for the World Cup and for the final. But, Matthew Flamini was playing at left back. And, Matthew playing at left back. And Reyes was playing on the left-hand side of an attack. Thierry Henry was the main man. But let's not forget, the irony of the whole situation was Jens Lehmann was probably our best player in that round. Our main players were Jens Lehmann and Thierry Henry during that Champions League run. Remember, we semi-final, we beat Villarreal. Lehmann saves a penalty from Raquelme. The quarterfinals, we beat Juventus.
The run to the final, Kenny.
Yeah, that's it. So
you didn't concede a goal after Champions League.
Yes, if you go through those
goals all season.
Yeah, so you go through those games. Obviously, we FC Tum, like I said, the group stage, Ajax we're always going to beat. But you think about a game against Sparta Praha when we won away. Thierry Henry broke Ian Wright's goal scoring record that season in that game, and Thierry Henry was actually injured. Thierry Henry was actually injured for the first part of that season. So if you think about those first part of the season, we were a striker short, and we're short of our best player. So we had to shoulder on him. Thierry Henry comes off the bench, gets the goal, breaks the record, and then afterwards we hit the ground running. But if you think about it, we got the group stage pretty comfortably. But there was no way. Like we were favourites against Real Madrid. We were definitely underdogs. Real Madrid still had their Galacticos. They still had Zidane, they had Beckham, they had Ronaldo, but we had a game plan where we'll make ourselves compact. We defended and we used the pace of Reyes and Henry in a break. And Henry scores that beautiful goal in Bernabeu. And after that, I was pretty confident that we were going to get to the next round. And then Juventus as well. Francesco Fabregas scored one of the goals. Vieira, like I said, came back from Juventus.
Wasn't that the game, Kenny, when a fox ran on the pitch?
Yes, it was a game of fox ran on the pitch, but it was one of those games where Vieira was basically outperformed by Fabregas. So it's one of those things where it was a great game. And then it was one of those times when my friend of mine said to me, the Champions League final, we could get a ticket. I said, why is that? He goes, well, to get points, I said, how do we get tickets? Well, at that time, if you went to cup finals, i.e. FA Cup finals, which Arsenal were in every year, and you went to the semi-finals, and you went to the other way, your cup finals and your semi-finals counted as credits, believe it or not. So I had enough. Because I went to every cup final in Cardiff, and I went to every semi-final on the way there, and I went to the on away game here and there. I had enough credits to get a cup final, but it didn't occur to me because I never knew that. I was wondering why I always got to cup finals. So a friend of mine went up and he goes, Ken, whatever we're doing, we're going to the League Cup, the Champions League finals. And what do you mean we're going to Champions League final? We never get a Champions League final. We're Arsenal. We're not getting it. He goes, Ken, I've got a good feeling about it. We're going. So when we played Villarreal, and obviously, I believe it's Kolo Toure got the goal, and then we got the semi-final. Ironically, Sol Campbell was basically had one of his dark episodes. So it's basically Senderos and Toure who were playing in the sort of the centre, playing at centre half, and Senderos actually played in those games against Real Madrid and Juventus, and actually did really well because at that time when I used to watch Arsenal, I used to come after the match. Cesc Fabregas and Senderos like joined at the hip. They were like husband and wife because I still see them together, because I think Senderos' mum's Senderos has got a Spanish dad and a sort of Croatian Croatian father, although he's born in Switzerland. So he was obviously they were Spanish speaking, but he did really well for us. But obviously Sol Campbell, you play Sol Campbell, though a lot of fans really thought Sol Campbell was past it. But going back to the backstory, we got basically it was the same sort of situation with a difference. It wasn't the self-addressed envelope. It was the age of online. You had to book online for the tickets, but what you had to do, you had to take a photograph of your passport, and you give your passport details, and you went online, applied for it, and 3 of us wanted to get Champions League final tickets. Me and my mate got the ticket. My other mate, who didn't want to go to cup finals because he didn't want to go to a carpet, missed out. And I said to him, well, it's your bloody fault because you effed up there. So basically,
exactly.
Yeah, you effed up there because I think one of the other friends had a falling out, so he wouldn't go cut finals. So he basically cut his nose off to spite his face. So basically, what we did is that we got we made the application online. Once again, you give your bank details, and I was the lead tenant, and I said basically, so they said, right, pick your ticket. They didn't even ask to pick your tickets, but they were quite generous to the extent that my ticket to the Champions League final was, I think it was about £45. It was between £40 and £45. Now, this is 2006, right? Now, you think about 2022, how much do you think a Champions League final ticket will cost now? Probably about £125. Yes or no? Well, in 2006, it was £45. So we both got our tickets. We actually met up in Holloway Road at 11:30 outside Holloway Station, where the coach picked us up, and then they drove us towards towards the cliffs of Dover. And from the cliffs of Dover, we got to cliffs of Dover about by about midnight, and then straight onto the boat. No messing about. Put us on the boat, and then we actually got.
You went over the channel in the ferry, Kenny.
Yeah, we got a ferry. We got a ferry from the Calais. So basically, we got a ferry from Dover. So how you get to Dover, they take your passport details. The actual guy, the actual guy on the coach does everything for you. Because simple reason, because we had tickets, had our passport details and names around. We had ticket situations. So our travel was about £99. So the ticket was £45, and our travel was £99 because my mother-in-law paid for me. Believe it or not, she paid my travel to go to the game. So we get to Calais. What I didn't realise is a lot of people from the Duke of Edinburgh pub in Fontenay Road, that pub I was telling you about. They all had they all had coach trips as well, but these guys didn't have tickets. So because these guys didn't have tickets, they all basically went to Paris just for the day. So I said, Damien, what are you doing here? Oh, bloody hell, mate. Paddy, and it was all these guys I grew up with. And I thought, how many got tickets? Well, I said, well, there was about 100 of them and only about 10 had tickets. So they're all basically on the beg for tickets. And let me tell you something now. We got to Calais, right? No word of word. We get to Calais. And then from Calais, we get driven all the way up from Calais up to Paris to the Saint-Denis, and then they basically said, right, off you go. And I said, I actually remember speaking to our tour guide. I said, so what's he doing then? Oh, the driver said, well, he has to sleep for 12 hours, at least 12 hours, and then because if he doesn't have a sleep, then he's in breach of his contract, and he'll what's happened? The company can get sued because obviously late night travel. So we got to Paris, got to the Saint-Denis, one of the poorest and most impoverished areas in the world. I tell you, if you think certain parts of Africa was poor, you have to, go to Saint-Denis. It was like being in the third world there. Or if you think about the poorest people who happen to be, French West Indians, French Africans, and French North Africans, that's where they lived in Saint-Denis. So we got there. We saw a player called Ryan Smith, who was on loan to Leicester City from us. He was there. Tony Adams was there. And then we had all the TV cameras like BBC London, and we had Thames Sport, Thames News, and they were all interviewing fans. And I said to my mate, I had baggy trousers, right? And you had zips on the trousers, those sort of styles. I've actually got it on the magazine. I said, right, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go to McDonald's. We're not leaving the stadium. Oh, yeah, by the way, you're not getting your ticket until kickoff. He said, come on, mate. I said, no, come on, mate. We come this far. Now, if we come this far and someone nabs our tickets, how are you going to feel? Trust me on this. And I was bloody right. Because what was happening, you know what happened with Liverpool fans?
Yeah.
When they played in the same stadium last.
Yeah.
Well, we played in that stadium, and it was the same. It wasn't quite the same thing, but it was the same attitude. The police had I never seen police unless you went abroad to Africa. I never seen police live ammunition. They were basically like RoboCop, had the guns, and then you had these Arsenal fans singing songs, but they're all in French accents. So that's why I said. So I pointed to my mate and said, "That's why you can't have your ticket. Look at this guy. He's circling around, and you had people going, please give me a ticket." So I wanted to have a ticket. Then about an hour before kickoff, I said, "Yeah, let's go in." An hour and a half, and I thought it was really iconic because we got on the ground, and it was one of the best atmospheres ever. You had the shirts. I still got the shirt here somewhere. Where a few weeks before we had those iconic shirts. Last game at Highbury, Arsenal. We had those kind of grey shirts with yellow writing with Arsenal, Champions League, Barcelona, Arsenal. So you get in the ground, and I swear to God, it was like a theatre. It was like a night of proms, but it was a case of like the game itself, where for some peculiar reason I was pretty confident we were going to win it, and I was even more confident when the game started because we were on top, and then Lienz. But
that's why you brought that up.
Yeah, but it's not Jens, not Jens, because if you think about it, when who was it? Was it Ronaldinho who got fouled? Or no, it's Eto'o. Samuel Eto'o gets put. So as a ball was put through by it was Yavi, put a beautiful pass in. Samuel Eto'o comes like Yemen has one of his Russia's blood. He upends Samuel Eto'o, but what's happened, right, is that Juliet Julie puts the ball into the net. So the referee could have given a goal and given Lehmann a yellow card, but for some reason that guy Tolga Hauger sent off Lehmann. And let me tell you something now. I hate that man now. Even now, December 2022, I've never forgiven Tolga Hauger. I hate him with a passion. If I ever get my hands on him, I'll wring his neck. I hate
I
him.
would have just preferred, Kenny, if they'd given them the goal and booked him.
Because you think about it, when he's blowing the whistle, right? But when he's blowing the whistle, when he's actually got the whistle in his mouth, and when the whistle was in his mouth, right? When the whistle's in his mouth, Julie has actually put the ball in the net, but he has to go by the letter of the law. He forgot about the occasion. He goes and books Lehmann, goes and sends Lehmann off. And 70 minutes down, Arsene Wenger's got a decision to make. He brings on Mounier, so he's got to take off Robert Perez. Again, that is something that Robert Perez, and there's always been a barrier between Robert Perez and Arsene Wenger, because Robert Perez has never forgiven or forgotten the fact that he was the one that substituted. But he needed the pace of Lundberg, he needed a strong run, he needed Fabregas. So Robert Perez was the fall guy, and that's why another reason why I hate Torge Hauger, because he forced. He was Robert Perez was a casualty, but even then we were dominating the game. Henri
said, I remember him saying after the game that they were in trouble when we had 10 men. So God knows what would have happened if we'd had 11.
Yeah, we were destroying them, running rings around them. You know, you think about Eboué, who played right back that game. He does one of his usual dives. Henri puts a great cross in. Sol Campbell gets a header, and I swear to God, you should have been in our ring when Sol Campbell got a header. It was pandemonium. I actually got on someone's back, and he gave me a piggyback in the part of celebrations. We were falling forward, we were running to each other, and believe it or not, the whole of everyone you grew up with was at that game. So you were running up to them, grabbing people's ears, running down the front, and it was. If you think in my performance, my celebrations, the cup final at Chelsea or anything, that game was unbelievable, complete utter pandemonium when we scored, and then the other iconic part of the match is that Henri had that chance. Henri had that chance to make it 2-0. If Henri puts that away, we win the Champions League.
Henri, if he scored, it would have been 2-0 up.
It was 2-0
up, and that would have been it. Game over. They wouldn't have come back.
It was one of Henri's side foot pass backs. It wasn't even a shot, it was a pass back. Henri, what are you doing to me? So, and then, you know, Barcelona made that iconic substitution, bring on Henrik Larsson. He's involved in the goals. The first goal was involved with, little, no look pass for Samuel Eto'o, 1-1. And after they scored, I knew we were going to lose it. It was, and one of the things that I don't, people seem to forget, it was bloody wet as well. When we were winning, it didn't bother me that it was raining. But when we started losing, the weather bothered me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then obviously Belletti, who went to Chelsea, got the winner, and that's it. It was one of the saddest moments of my life. But you know what I remember about it? That I remember Arsene Wenger having a go at one of the sort of press officers, because he was so affected by the defeat. She kept on trying to get him to speak to the media, and he was pushing her away. And then you could see Thierry Henry pushing away. And I thought, you know what? I said, because it's a cup final, I thought, I'm not going to leave my boys when they get their medals. They got me here. I'm going to stay behind. So a few of us stood behind, but we left the stadium afterwards. And one of the most saddest moments was that as we come out of the stadium, we could hear the Champions League song, and you knew that they were lifting a trophy. And then the other painful moment was the Barcelona song as well. So it's one of those things where, it was so painful, and it still resonates now because, I can't see us get to a Champions League final. And I get why Spurs fans were so excited 3 years ago when they got there, because you think about it, it's very rare for us to get a cup for Champions League final, let alone them. And you think about it, is that it hurts to a certain extent, because we've had so many opportunities to win the competition. We got nowhere near, and then when we get there, Tuna Hauger messes up for us. And then you think about not only Tuna Hauger, the bastard, he never happens again. That hurts. But you know what?
Mate,
If I tell you all this desert island, I'm going to start crying my eyes out because it hurts. It still hurts to this day. And sadly as well. Well, not sadly. My wife is phoning me, goes, "Your dinner's ready. I want to throw it away and all that."
I know, because the thing is, it upsets me because the fact that we were so close to doing it, but also I've got this thing in the back of my head of how would the club be now different if we had won it?
If we won it, what would happen? We've got bigger names to the club, and we probably would have. We've already won it again. So, if you think about it on a sort of logical basis, what's happened is that it was never going to happen again, and that's what hurts more than anything.
So that's the big worry, though, isn't it? It's the fact that are we going to get there and do this again? This is the problem, and it concerns me because I'm worried about it because I'm not convinced that we're going to get there for a good long time. Do you know what I mean? We're doing well at the moment and all the rest of it, but if we come up against a real top draw side in the Champions League, given our record, it worries me, Kenny. It really does. But
you got to embrace it. You got to embrace the. I know I've got to go in a minute, but one thing about it is you have to look at Chelsea. They took it with both arms. They won it twice. The teams that won, their teams that won the Champions League were nowhere near the level of the great teams they had. Spurs were no great shakes, but they got to a final. We've got to believe. We can't be afraid of these teams in Europe. You think about it, Barcelona on the wane, Real Madrid didn't play the great Real Madrid football to win it. So it's an open tournament. I think if you pay these teams too much respect, you lose. You've got to remember, the Champions League is the elite. So if you're in the Champions League, you have to see yourself as one of the contenders, especially with an English team, because the English team, the Premiership, is the strongest league in Europe. So really and truly, Premiership teams should be going into it believing they can win it. We pay too much respect to the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, the Man Cities, all those sort of teams. When we should think, well, hang on here, we're good enough as well. And I think if we get to Champions League next season, that's got to be our attitude. But as you said,
you're 100% right. We should be going in there and we should be going all out to win it. There's no reason why we shouldn't. But Kenny, I've got just 3 more questions I want to ask you.
All right. Yeah, of course, yeah.
So the first one is, right, I'm going to leave you on your desert island shortly, right, to enjoy your time there. And the first question I want to ask you, though, before we do that, is I'm going to give you the chance to sign any player for Arsenal from the history of the game in their prime with no restrictions, open checkbook. You can have whoever you want and you can put them in any Arsenal team that you want. Who would that player be and what team would you put him in?
I'll have Cristiano Ronaldo in the team in the team of 2006. I'll have
in that 2016.
Yeah, because I think him and Henry would be magic together. I'll have believe it or not, I'll have had in terms of like one of the teams, the team that got the semi-final team in 2009, I would have had in terms of I would have had Peter Schmeichel in goal for that 2019 because I think we had a Munya. You know what I mean? If we had someone like Peter Schmeichel, we probably would have got the final. And then if you think about what third player, any player I want, I would definitely have had the Nizaro de Lima, the original Ronaldo, in any of those teams that we were in the Champions League, because I think if we had those 3 players, we won a Champions League with those 3 players. Those 3 players are the sort of players we would need.
Definitely. So the second question, you have the chance to have your favourite player of all time on your desert island with you, right? It can be from any team. It doesn't have to be an Arsenal player, although I suspect it will be.
It's definitely going to be an Arsenal player. Thierry Henry is for me. I understand. I can actually see why they say Dennis Bergkamp. But Thierry Henry was one of the catalysts of making us the team that's been feared. So I like definitely Thierry Henry. He's a player that I've watched of all the time I've watched. Obviously, Liam Brady gave me a bit of pleasure. I was too young to appreciate him, but when I was a fully formed Arsenal fan, a fully formed adult, Thierry Henry's a player I want to spend time with. He's probably be a moody guy, moody sod, but I'll still.
He wouldn't be happy being deserted on a desert island, I'm sure.
Yeah. They'll probably moan a lot, but yeah, he's a player I like to spend time with.
So, thirdly, right, you have the chance to have a video of any football match, right, from the history of football, in addition to the ones we've just talked about this evening, on the island with you. Which match would it be? It doesn't have to be an Arsenal game, and it doesn't have to be a club match. It can be an international match as well. What one would you choose to take with you, Kenny?
You know what? Believe it or not, I would like to take the semi-final at White Hart Lane in 1987, the replay.
Yes, mate. I was at that game. It was insane.
Because you know why you want to take that? It's because we for some reason we weren't the favourites. But the only reason why we weren't the favourites was because they beat us in the first leg at Highbury. How that happened? Because we smashed it to pieces in the league game in White Hart Lane. I suppose we were overconfident, but they played really well, defended their hearts, beat us. But the reason why I want that game is because the game before then, they were announcing how to get cup final tickets when they beat us 1-0 half time. So that's the game I'll definitely take without fail.
Yeah, I remember. Right, I remember they were 1-0 up. And there was about 5 minutes to go, if I remember right. I might have got this wrong, but I'm sure with about 5 minutes to go, they were telling their fans, listen, you can get your tickets, queue up tomorrow outside the ground, and you can get your tickets. And the the arrogance of it is just off the scale.
Well, you think about it. They had a great side. They had some great players. There's some great players. Remember, when you think about it, that season, Spurs had the 5 midfielders. Remember, they played like France. Remember where France played 4-5-1? Well, Spurs played 4-5-1, where Clive Allen was on his own up front, and they had like Waddle, Hoddle, Steve Hodge, Paul Allen, and Ozzy Ardiles. Wicked team, wicked players. And they had Richard Gough, who signed from Dundee United. He was a great defender. They still had Ray Clements with experience. They had Gary Mabbott, who's a good partner for him. But, before then they had, Danny Thomas. So, yeah.
It was they had a really, really good, strong side. And the atmosphere that night, my God, it was insane. And then, Charlie Nicholas gets injured. I think it was the game.
Well, that's in his ankle, isn't it? So,
Dean Allison comes on, scores the equaliser, and then the next thing you know, Rocky's dancing through the midfield and through
and he didn't catch it clean. Was my wife's going to kill you if you don't let me go because dinner's been ready for half an hour.
I'm sorry, mate.
I'm gonna have to let you go, and then you're gonna have to chop this up.
It was fantastic talking to you, mate.
I enjoyed every minute of it. But
me too. But thank you very much. Right? I'll speak to you soon, Kenny. Go and enjoy your dinner.
All right, I'll speak to you later. See you later, Woz.
Take care, Kenny.
Take care.
Cheers, mate. Bye. Yeah, everyone. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Thanks very much for watching, because I absolutely loved it, listening to Kenny talking about his 5 matches. So I'll be back soon. I'm not sure when I'm going to do my next video. I'm probably might be doing one this week about the state of coaching of players in the UK, except for England. That would be an interesting one. But yeah, UK and Ireland, talking about that. And then obviously at the weekend, I'm going to be doing my match day live show. That will start at 2:30 on Saturday. So anyway, guys, thanks ever so much for coming in and throwing all your comments in the chat and whatnot. It was absolutely fantastic to see you all. Thank you so much for coming in. And I'm going to try and do another one of these Desert Island football matches soon. I hope you enjoyed it all. I really hope you enjoyed it because I absolutely loved it. I really did. Anyway, guys, look, take care of yourselves. Have a great evening or rest of your day, wherever you are. Please take care of your family, your friends, and your loved ones. And remember, look after yourselves and make some love and kindness around the world. Take care, everyone. Thanks ever so much for watching and tuning in. And I'll see you all again soon. Take care. Bye for now.